Hare Krishna. Chakov Pastari Gyascha Kripasindu Durabacha. So, welcome to our continuing reading of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada's summary study of the 10th canto. We're on chapter 7, the salvation of Trinavarta. First we're going to change a little bit, because Prabhupada had this chanting of Lord Chaitanya from Chaitanya Charitamrita, the introduction to the book. Krishna, 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 Rama, Raghava, Rama, Raghava, Rama, Krishna, 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 The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Chapter 7, The Salvation of Trinavarta. By the way, Trinavarta means, Trina is straw, or dry grass, like Trinadapi Sunichena, Trina. And Varta means spinning around, twirling, Vrit, going around. So he's the whirlwind demon, known by making little cyclones of dried grass. The salvation of Trinavarta.
Did you want to mention Jayananda?
Oh yeah, yeah. I do want today. Yeah, thank you. Is the disappearance day of Jayananda, my god brother. I knew him, a very wonderful devotee, and did a great deal to establish Rath Yatra in ISKCON. Prabhupada was quite fond of him. We're going to learn a little bit about him.
Yes, apparently Krishna book was one of Jayananda Prabhu's favorite books, and inside the jacket of his own copy of Krishna book, some devotees found these notes written by Jayananda Prabhu after he passed away. Some of you may have seen this before, but I'll go ahead and read out loud his notes to kind of set the mood of reading Krishna book tonight. So Jayananda Prabhu wrote, "As you begin to apply the book's clearly described principles to your life, you will quickly experience a new realm of mental poise and experience an inner happiness even in the midst of the most trying circumstances. You will worry less and enjoy more. your power of concentration, memory, and understanding and creativity will increase. You will work more energetically, more confidently and efficiently, as well as relate better to people. And you will succeed more easily at whatever you try doing. At night you will fall asleep immediately, and in the morning you will awaken more refreshed, even on less hours of sleep than you would normally need. Consequently, you will understand the real purpose of your life and your unique role in creation. So we just thought to read that before tonight's.
Good benediction, huh?
Yeah.
May he bless us. The salvation of Trinavarta. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is always full with 6 opulences, namely complete wealth, complete strength, complete fame, complete knowledge, complete beauty, and complete renunciation. The Lord, by the way, this is the definition of Bhagavan. You have these 6 opulences: wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. The renunciation is there because it's quite an opulence if you have all these things and you're still not attached. So that's why that's there as a opulence. So this is explaining Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is Prabhupada's translation of Bhagavan. The Lord appears in different, complete, eternal forms of incarnation. The conditioned soul has immense opportunity to hear about the transcendental activities of the Lord in these different incarnations. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said, Janma karma chame divyam. The pastimes and activities of the Lord are not material. This is Bhagavad Gita 4:9. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vedi tatvataha chaktvadeha punarjanma ma naiti mameti sorjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Interesting to point out about this, janma and karma are usually the marks of a conditioned soul. They take birth in the world and they undergo karma, but it just means appearance and activity. So his janma and karma are divyam. They're divine, transcendental. So if we understand Krishna's janma and karma, there's no more janma and karma for us. That's what this verse is saying. So this is a time reading Krishna book to understand Krishna's janma and karma. The pastimes and activities of the Lord are not material. They are beyond the material conception, and the conditioned soul can benefit by hearing such uncommon activities. Hearing is an opportunity to associate with the Lord. To hear his activities is to evolve one's transcendental nature simply by hearing. The conditioned soul has a natural aptitude to hear something about other conditioned souls in the form of fiction, drama, and novel. That inclination to hear something about others may be utilized in hearing the pastimes of the Lord. People are right now, they'd like to read a lot or see a lot about big demons, actually, criminals and gangsters. But here we have another way of hearing about Krishna. Then one can immediately evolve his transcendental nature. Krishna's pastimes are not only beautiful, they are also very pleasing to the mind. If someone takes advantage of hearing the pastimes of the Lord, the material contamination of dust accumulated in the heart due to long association with material nature, that means previous births, the dust accumulated in the heart due to long association with material nature can be immediately cleansed. Lord Chaitanya also instructed that simply by hearing the transcendental name of Lord Krishna, one can cleanse the heart of all material contamination. There are different processes for self-realization, but this process of devotional service, of which hearing is the most important function, when adopted by any conditioned soul, will automatically cleanse him of the material contamination and enable him to realize his constitutional position. Conditional life is due to this contamination only, and as soon as it is cleared off, then naturally the dormant function of the living entity rendering service to the Lord awakens. By developing his eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord, one becomes eligible to create friendship with the devotees. Interesting, a sequence there. Maharaj Parikshit recommended from practical experience that everyone try to hear about the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. This Krishna treatise, in the book, it's in italics, meaning the book titled, this Krishna treatise is meant for that purpose, and the reader may take advantage of it to attain the ultimate goal of human life. The Lord, out of his causeless mercy, descends to this material world and displays his activities just like an ordinary man. Unfortunately, the impersonalists or the atheistic class of men consider Krishna to be an ordinary man like themselves, so they deride him. This is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita by the Lord himself when he says, Avajanati mam mudha. I'll read that verse. This is Bhagavad Gita 9:11. Avajanati mam mudha manusim tanum ashritam param bhava janato mama bhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. The mudhas, avajanatima mudha, the mudhas or rascals take Krishna to be an ordinary man or a slightly more powerful man. Out of their great misfortune, they cannot accept him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes such unfortunate persons misrepresent themselves as incarnations of Krishna without referring to the authorized scriptures. So that's kind of Prabhupada's little preface to the narration. Now we go back, we go into the story. When Krishna grew up a little more, he began to turn himself backside up, that is, flip himself over. He did not merely lie down on his back. So if you have had children, that's a big occasion when they turn themselves over all by themselves. And another function was observed by Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, Krishna's first birthday. They arranged for Krishna's birthday ceremony, which is still observed by all followers of the Vedic principles. In parentheses, Krishna's birthday ceremony is observed in India by all Hindus, irrespective of different sectarian views. All the cowherd men and women were invited to participate in the jubilant celebration. A nice band played, and the assembled people enjoyed it. All the learned brahmanas were invited, and they chanted Vedic hymns for the good fortune of Krishna. During the chanting of the Vedic hymns and playing of the bands, Krishna was bathed by Mother Yashoda. This bathing ceremony is technically called Abhisheka, and even today this is observed in all the temples of Vrindavan on Janmashtami Day, or the birthday anniversary of Lord Krishna. That is, the deities of Krishna in the temple are given the Abhishek. On this occasion, Mother Yashoda arranged to distribute a large quantity of grain, and first-class cows decorated with golden ornaments were made ready to be given in charity to the learned, respectable brahmanas. Yashoda took her bath and dressed herself nicely, and taking child Krishna, duly dressed and bathed, on her lap, she sat down to hear the Vedic hymns chanted by the brahmanas. While Mother Yashoda was listening to the chanting of the Vedic hymns, the child appeared to be falling asleep. And therefore she very silently laid him down on the bed. Being engaged in receiving all the friends, relatives, and residents of Vrindavan on that holy occasion, she forgot to feed the child milk. He was crying, being hungry, but Mother Yashoda could not hear him cry because of various noises. The child, however, became angry because he was hungry and his mother was not paying attention to him. So he lifted his legs and began to kick his lotus feet, just like an ordinary child. Baby Krishna had been placed underneath a hand-drawn cart, and while he was kicking his legs, he accidentally touched the wheel of the cart, and it collapsed. Various kinds of utensils and dishes, made of brass and other metals, had been piled up in the handcart, and they all fell down with a great noise. The wheel of the cart separated from the axle, and the spokes of the wheel were all broken and scattered hither and thither. Mother Yashoda and all the gopis, as well as Maharaj Nanda and the cowherd men, were astonished as to how the cart could have collapsed by itself. All the men and women who were assembled for the holy function crowded around and began to suggest how the cart might have collapsed. No one could ascertain the cause, but some small children who were entrusted to play with baby Krishna informed the crowd that it was due to Krishna striking his feet against the wheel. They assured the crowd that they had seen how it happened with their own eyes, and they strongly asserted the point. Some were listening to the statement of the small children, but others said, "How can you believe the statements of these children?" The cowherd men and women could not understand that the all-powerful personality of Godhead was lying there as a baby, and that he could do anything. But the possible and impossible were in his power. Now, this leaves a little bit out of what's in the Bhagavatam, because this was the first demon. After Putana, Shankachuda, this cart demon. The demon took a form of the cart, and baby Krishna recognized it, and so by crushing the cart like that, he killed this demon. Now the other people didn't recognize it, but this was one of the demons, that the second demon after Putana, that he killed. Some reason it's not here in the Krishna book, but it is in the Bhagavatam. While the discussion was going on, baby Krishna cried. Without remonstration, that is, without having any doubts about this in this context, without remonstration, Mother Yashoda picked the child up on her lap and called the learned brahmanas to chant the holy Vedic hymns to counteract the evil spirits. At the same time, she allowed the baby to suck her breast. If a child sucks the mother's breast nicely, it is to be understood that he is out of all danger. After this, all the stronger cowherd men put the broken cart in order, and all the scattered things were set up nicely as before. The brahmanas thereafter began to offer oblations to the sacrificial fire with yogurt, butter, kusha grass, and water. They worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the good fortune of the child. The brahmanas who were present at that time were all qualified because they were not envious. They never indulged in untruthfulness. They were never proud. They were non-violent. And they never claimed any false prestige. They were all bona fide brahmanas, and there was no reason to think that their blessings would be useless. With firm faith in the qualified brahmanas, Nanda Maharaj took his child on his lap and bathed him with water, mixed with various herbs, while the brahmanas chanted hymns from the Rig, Yajur, and Sama Vedas. It is said that without being a qualified brahmana, one should not read the mantras of the Vedas. Here is the proof that the brahmanas were qualified with all the Brahminical symptoms. Maharaj Nanda also had full faith in them. Therefore, they were allowed to perform the ritualistic ceremonies by chanting the Vedic mantras. There are many different varieties of sacrifices recommended for different purposes, but the mantras are all to be chanted by qualified brahmanas. And because in this age of Kali, such qualified brahmanas are not available, all Vedic ritualistic sacrifices are forbidden. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore recommended only one kind of sacrifice in this age, namely the Sankirtan Yajna, or chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As the Brahmanas chanted the Vedic hymns and performed the ritualistic ceremonies for the second time, for the first time it had been all messed up, Nanda, because on that cart they had all their stuff piled up and everything. They had to okay, so it's the second time. As the Brahmanas chanted the Vedic hymns and performed the ritualistic ceremonies for the second time, Nanda Maharaj again gave them huge quantities of grain and many cows. So he did it again. He didn't say, okay, you were all the cows which were given in charity were covered with nice gold-embroidered garments, and their horns were bedecked with golden rings. Their hooves were covered with silver plate, and they wore garlands of flowers. He gave so many cows just for the welfare of his wonderful child, and the Brahmanas in return bestowed their heartfelt blessings. And the blessings offered by the able Brahmanas were never to be baffled. One day, shortly after the ceremony, when Mother Yashoda was patting her baby on her lap, the baby felt too heavy. So here now you'd start to see the next thing, because here's a little child on her lap and suddenly it starts to get heavier. And then heavier. So this is a foretaste of foreshadowing what's to come also. The baby felt too heavy, and being unable to carry him, she unwillingly placed him on the ground. So you imagine she must be a little puzzled. Why is the baby suddenly? After a while, she became engaged in household affairs. At that time, a servant of Kamsa, known as Trinavarta, as instructed by Kamsa, appeared there in the shape of a whirlwind. So that the name Trinavarta means whirling the dust and the straw and around. We sometimes call them dust devils. So they're demonic. So at that time, a servant of Kamsa known as Trinavarta, as instructed by Kamsa, appeared there in the shape of a whirlwind. He picked the child up on his shoulders and raised a great dust storm all over Vrindavan, covering everyone's eyes. So you could imagine they couldn't see, and there were tears too. Within a few moments, the whole area of Vrindavan became so densely dark that no one could see himself or anyone else. During this great catastrophe, Mother Yashoda could not see her baby, who had been taken away by the whirlwind, and she began to cry very piteously. She fell down on the ground, exactly like a cow who has just lost her calf. When Mother Yashoda was so piteously crying, all the cowherd women immediately came and began to look for the baby. But they were disappointed and could not find him. The Trinavarta demon went high into the sky with baby Krishna on his shoulder. But the baby assumed such a weight that suddenly he could not go any further, and he had to stop his whirlwind activities. Baby Krishna made himself heavy and began to weigh down the demon, catching hold of his neck. Trinavarta felt the baby to be as heavy as a big mountain, and he tried to get out of his clutches, but he was unable to do so, and his eyes popped out from their sockets. Crying very furiously, he fell down to the ground of Vrindavan and died. The demon felt exactly like Tripurasura, who was pierced by the arrow of Lord Shiva. Tripurari is one of the names of Lord Shiva, killer of the Tripura demon. Trinavarta hit a stone slab, and his limbs were smashed. His body became visible to all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. So many times these demons are furnished with various yoga cities. There's 8 of them. Anima, you can make yourself very tiny. Go through keyholes and things like that, like an atom. Laghima city, you become weightless. You can ride the sunbeams. The yogis have these two. Mahima, you can make yourself very large. Prapti, which means acquisition, you can reach out and grab, I could reach out from here and grab fruit from a garden in Calcutta and hand it back to you. Prakamya, you have an irresistible willpower. Nobody can stop you from doing anything. Ishistva, I don't know exactly what that is. It's a kind of supremacy. Prabhupada says, he explains this, by the way, in the Nectar of Devotion. Ishistva, he says, one can create and destroy an entire planet simply by will. So supremacy is the translation of it. Vashishtva, subduing others to his will, anyone comes under your control. And Kamavasayita, which is Prabhupada says, the highest perfection of mystic power is Kamavasayita. This is also magic, but where the prakamya power acts to create wonderful effects within the scope of nature, Kamavasayita permits one to contradict nature, in other words, do the impossible. Anyway, these yoga siddhis, they're not miracles. Prabhupada said miracle means you just don't know how it's done. So these demons had many times these kinds of siddhis. So you can be a good circus act if you have them. So this demon had this city where he could fly up in the sky, and then he crashed to the ground. Yep. Because Krishna became heavy. When the gopis saw the demon killed and child Krishna very happily playing on his body, they immediately picked Krishna up with great affection. The cowherd men and women became very happy to get back their beloved child Krishna. At that time, they began to talk about how wonderful it was that the demon had taken away the child to devour him, but could not do so. Instead, he fell down dead. Some of them supported the situation. This is proper because those who are too sinful die from their sinful reactions, and child Krishna is pious. Therefore, he's safe from all kinds of fearful situations. And we too must have performed great sacrifices in our previous lives, worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, giving great wealth and charity, and acting philanthropically for the general welfare of men. Because of such pious activities, the child is safe from all danger. They had to think of him, they couldn't think of him as being all-powerful. They had to always think of him as a little child. We have to take care of him. And so, there must have been some other circumstances around which made this happen. He couldn't have done it, but our pious activities or other people's sinful reactions, this is why this happened. The gopis assembled there spoke among themselves. What sort of austerities and penances we must have undergone in our previous lives. We must have worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, offered different kinds of sacrifices, made charities, and performed many welfare activities for the public, such as growing banyan trees and excavating wells. As a result of these pious activities, we have gotten back our child, even though he was supposed to be dead. Now he has come back to enliven his relatives. After observing such wonderful happenings, Nanda Maharaj began to think of the words of Vasudeva again and again, who warned him that these things might happen in the last chapter. I think I may have marked that actually in the book. Let me see. Yeah, Vasudeva said, Vasudeva had said, please tell me, he's talking to Nanda, he said, please tell me about the welfare of Vrindavan. You have many animals. Are they happy? Are they getting sufficient grass and water? Please also let me know whether the place where you are now living is undisturbed and peaceful. This inquiry was made by Vasudeva because he was very anxious about Krishna's safety. He knew that Kamsa and his followers were trying to kill Krishna by sending various kinds of demons. They had already resolved that all the children born within 10 days of the birthday of Krishna should be killed. Because Vasudeva was so anxious about Krishna, he inquired about the safety of his residents. So this is what Nanda Maharaj is thinking of these words, of the worries of Vasudeva, and the safety of Krishna. After this incident, when Yashoda once was nursing her child and patting him with great affection, there streamed a profuse supply of milk from her breast. And when she opened the mouth of the child with her fingers, she suddenly saw the universal manifestation within his mouth. She saw within the mouth of Krishna the whole sky, including the luminaries, stars in all directions, the sun, moon, fire, air, seas, islands, mountains, rivers, forests, and all other movable and immovable entities. In other words, the universal form. When Mother Yashoda saw this, her heart began to throb, and she murmured within herself, "How wonderful this is." She could not express anything, but simply closed her eyes. She was absorbed in wonderful thoughts. Krishna is showing the universal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even when lying down on the lap of his mother, proves that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whether he is manifested as a child on the lap of his mother or as a charioteer on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, where he also showed the universal form to Arjuna. The concoction of the impersonalists that one can become God by meditation or by some artificial material activities is herewith declared false. God is always God in any condition or status, and the living entities are always the parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They can never be equal to the inconceivable supernatural power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 7th chapter of Krishna, the salvation of Trinavarta.
If anybody has questions, comments, reflections, anything that they would like to add to the conversation here, go ahead and post those in the comment section. And just as we're getting going, although it was just the beginning part talking about Shakatasura, the cart demon, I just wanted to share real quick that for a while I was a little confused about this cart demon. Like, how is there a demon that's a cart, and then Krishna kicks the cart, and then, like, how does that all function? And Prabhupada's purport in the 10th canto is really helpful of understanding this, that Shakatasura was actually a ghost.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, and so Prabhupada writes, he says, this is in the purport to 10.7.9, he writes, "We have heard of peoples being haunted by ghosts. Having no gross material body, a ghost seeks shelter of a gross body to stay in and haunt. The Shakatasura was a ghost who had taken shelter of the handcart and was looking for the opportunity to do mischief to Krishna. When Krishna kicked the cart with his small and very delicate legs, the ghost was immediately pushed down to the earth and his shelter dismantled." So
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad, yeah.
I felt that
I've forgotten about
clarified
that.
it.
That's right.
Yeah. Ekendra Prabhu, he writes, he says, "Thank you very much for reading to us. My obeisances to you. When Yashoda was crying piteously when she couldn't see Krishna due to the dust storm, is it proper to say that since Krishna was the object of her affections, her apparent distress was actually another manifestation of ecstatic love, and therefore different in quality from what we experience as material distress?"
I think so, because that's what accompanies it. When you feel that someone's going to get hurt, your attachment to them increases. So these kind of dangers made them increase their love for Krishna.
And we just have one more comment from Loka Leela Dasi. She says, "Krishna book is 10th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, very personal. Hearing is being freed. Hearing is good." Anything else?
Okay. So we can tune in again.
Let's
Interesting. You see this ends with this little story of the kind of universal form, and then chapter 8 is vision of the universal form. So that's the next. So you kind of get your way into it there. So we will next week.
Kanta Bhakti says, Hare Krishna Gurudev, thank you so much! Exclamation point. Okay.
It's fun reading these out loud, isn't it?
It is. It's fun hearing it. You're such a good reader, like with it. It's really engaging.
Okay, thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Krishna Book ki jai.